All right, we're back at it, everybody. Welcome into the Auburn Blitz podcast here, post-Christmas. Hope everybody had a great Christmas out there, and hope Santa Claus was good to you. Hope he didn't leave you too many bills behind. If you did, you know what you got to do.
Go to work.
You got to go pay them. So
That's right.
But we do hope everybody had a great Christmas time with your family, time to kind of reflect on what went on this past year as we head into a new year. They come by faster and faster. We were told that as we were younger kids, and when we thought we were going to live forever, and it just seemed like time went backwards. Now time is in warp speed as you turn around and you kind of see the transition of where you are in your life compared to where you were, and then where your parents are, and it's just the progression. And but again, a fun time. Hope y'all guys had a great Christmas, Randy. And as we move into the new year, we're going to do a look ahead here today. We're obviously going to talk about Auburn basketball. They've got one more game coming up on Monday with Monmouth, who's only won 2 games, by the way. So, boy, that ought to be a thriller. That ought to be. You talk about a warm-up game before before SEC play, but you got that game, and then Auburn will open up next Saturday with Missouri coming in, who's a very good basketball team. But Auburn does get to start SEC play at home in Auburn Arena or Neville Arena, whatever. I still call it Auburn Arena. I know he gave a lot of money to put his name on that building, so I'll give him credit. But Auburn gets to play at home to start SEC play. So we'll talk about Auburn basketball. We've been talking about this 2025 class for Auburn and in the transfer portal for so long now, for about the last 2 or 3 weeks. I thought I'd go ahead and take a look at 2026, the 2026 class, and Auburn is off to a really good start in the 26 class. And again, I know a lot of our Alabama friends, talk about Alabama's class this year, but if you look ahead, and you never know where the dust is going to settle on a 26 class, but right now it's starting to take shape very similar to what the 25 class did for Auburn in the top 10. We'll go through that for 24/7, but Randy, I'll just let you get your thoughts in on that and your intro thoughts as we get started here this morning.
Well, Merry Christmas again to everybody out there, and we appreciate you tuning in. And we had great growth this year in 2024, and a lot of high expectations leading into 2025, and couldn't do it without all of you. So comment away. If you got thoughts on the way that you look ahead toward this Auburn football program and continued talks on Auburn basketball, we would love to hear from you. Talking of the 2026 class, though, Brett, it is the time that you start looking at that with that early signing period already passing us by. Most of the guys that you're expecting in came with that group outside of the transfer portal, which we've got some more entering the transfer portal, and maybe you can hit on that. But a couple of more names going in. No one really that is a big-time surprise, but some that have had their moments at Auburn, i.e. Keontae Scott, that had his moments where I thought that he was one of the best, had one of the best athletes on the team, and had a downslide this year. And you can say that's a development issue or whatever you want to call it. I don't know what it is. I know
that positions.
Yeah, and when you're back in the secondary, that could be a big time problem, but finding your way back on the field at the old position would be the answer there. But I still don't, for whatever reason, I don't think that Auburn sees that being an answer moving forward. And so he's moving on, but we'd love to hear from you on some of those guys and thoughts around them. But Brett, let's talk about the 2026 class, and it's going to be a very good one here in the state. Starting with Garrett, I know that there was some news that came out this past week from the kid, Jamichael Garrett, coming up from South Alabama, and he's moving up to go to Auburn High School next year, big-time linebacker prospect here in the state of Alabama. Sadarian Morgan, you and I see him up close and personal every Friday night and throughout the year at Benjamin Russell High School. He's the #1 recruit in the state of Alabama and a top 10 recruit in the country next year, and deserves all of the praise. We've broadcasted him since he was very, very young, and he's a wonderful kid from a very athletic, solid family in Alexander City that has put some tremendous athletes out there. So Sadarian, really wishing him well. He's a solid 6'4", maybe even 6'5", if depending on how you measure him. He's all of 205 to 215, depending on what day you get him. I thought a couple of years ago there's no way that he stays away from the defensive end or tight end position. But now I look at his frame, Brett, and I think that he is not going to end up there. I think he's going to be a Calvin Johnson-esque athlete. He runs that well. He jumps that well. He's got grace in the air. He can catch footballs that look like they're out of position for most humans. So I think they'll take advantage of that. He doesn't need to bulk up. He's not naturally bulking up, Brett. I think he's slimming down, if anything, the older he gets. So tremendous athlete. He's the first place that I would start right there, Brett. But the thought that Auburn, if we can start developing and if we can start winning football games, which is a massive if right now, but if we can, the way that we're recruiting the state of Alabama, none of us can complain about that.
No, not at all. Obviously, you will start at Cedarian Morgan because he is the number one player in the 26 class. And we'll just go down the top 10. I do want to say, our good friends at 24/7, thought Christian Clemente had a great article on Jamichael Garrett that played at Gulf Shores High School, won a state championship 2 years ago there. Is originally from Oxford, Alabama. Had a relationship with Keith Etheridge. Keith Etheridge is the coach at Auburn High School. So if everybody's wanting to try to intertwine, that relationship, that's it. And plus, he's a commitment to Auburn in 2026. So he comes up here and he's in the shadow of Auburn University. So he gets to play in this community and be a part and kind of get familiar. He's got family in Alexander City, as he mentions that Cedarian Morgan is his cousin in the article. So, and he's a lead recruiter. When you look at guys that you get that are early commitments and have been early commitments in a class, they become cheerleaders and they become recruiters for you because nobody really has more influence on these kids than each other. They can really sway and start getting momentum going. He's already got a great relationship with Alvin Henderson and Deuce Knight. That's a big deal. And he's the guy that seems like he's the point man in this 26 class for Auburn that's leading the charge on several of these other guys. And he mentions that. And he says, I want Landon Duckworth and I want Cedarian Morgan. And he went down a list of all these other guys that he wants to join him at Auburn. So, that's what coaches look for too. Auburn's had some movement in the last couple of weeks on the defensive side of the ball and the coaching staff. So didn't cost any players really for Auburn. I know you said Keontae Scott, but that didn't have anything to do with Charles Kelly and guys moving around the defensive staff. Keontae Scott lost his way on the field, which was shocking to both me and you because going into this year, we thought he was one of our better defenders. Frankly, if he's on the field in the Iron Bowl to catch that punt instead of the other kid, Coy Moore, we probably win the football game because he probably don't drop it because he had been the punt returner all year for Auburn and done a great job. And so it's just weird to see how literally one play from that play really on, we didn't see much of Keontae Scott the rest of his Auburn career. So, but to get back to this class, Cedarian Morgan is the class of the class. He is number one, according to 24/7. He's the number 10 player in the country, the number 2 wide receiver, according to 24/7, the number 1 player in the state of Alabama. Now, these guys will be reevaluated again. This isn't the last time. They'll be reevaluated a couple more times. Could he get a 5th star? Yeah, he could. There's no doubt about it. I think Cedarian Morgan could definitely get a 5th star. He had a great year this year. Benjamin Russell with over 1,000 yards in receptions. I think he got on the field the latter half of the year on defense as well, Randy. And every time he was on the field, we knew he'd be an impact player there. So we'll just start with him. He definitely can play both sides of the football. Tremendous athlete up and down, but I do think his future is on the offensive side because he just brings a unique skill set, creates mismatches and problems for defense.
And Auburn, I think, is well in the mix here. I've had a lot of people ask me, and I don't have any inside knowledge. I don't talk to Cedarian directly about what he's planning here. But the only thing that I know is if you're going to compete for him, you're going to have to compete with all the big boys. Everybody out there is offering him. They're going to offer him a max deal, I think. I know it sounds like we're in the NFL or the NBA, but it's the truth, dude. Whatever the top receiver in the country receives from an offer standpoint, that's what he's going to get. And Oregon, I know, is in the mix. Ohio State's in the mix. Alabama's in the mix. You got any other big ones? I know Georgia's in the mix.
They're
Brett,
all
everybody
Texas.
wants him. So,
I mean,
you know, I think he'll end up where he feels like it's the best fit. He's a really smart kid, level head, comes from people that know how to play this game. And I think that he'll make the right decision for him. And look, I'm an Auburn fan. I'd love to see him at Auburn. But if Auburn doesn't do the best by him, then I'd love to see him somewhere else. I'll just be honest. Brett and I know I've talked like this for a long time. We've had too many end up there that for whatever reason they go in hiding and things don't work out. And there can be a million different reasons that things don't work out. But the number one reason things don't work out right now for Auburn football is we don't develop real well. And until we fix that, especially from a quarterback standpoint, you and I saw Landon Duckworth this year. I've seen him multiple times. He is a no-brainer. Is he more of a no-brainer than Deuce Knight? No. Is he the imps of Deuce Knight outside of his right-hand quarterback and Deuce is the left? Yes. They both got great size, great athleticism, can run the football, play in a dynamic program that wants to expose their talents to everyone out there. And Landon Duckworth played on probably from top to bottom here in the state of Alabama, the most talented team in the state of Alabama. When you take out classification, you take out enrollment, Jackson High School is so talented, so very talented. And he's the straw that churns that thing, man. When you got a quarterback back there with that type of size that is that versatile, you're going to have a great, great team. And he's got the pieces around him in a program that has always cared a lot about high school football too, Brett, in Jackson, Alabama. And look, they'll win it going away next year. They need to play. It would be a travesty in this state if we didn't see Thompson play Jackson next year. I mean, I think Saraland played them this year, and it was a close football game. It was the only loss that Jackson had on their schedule. Am I right by that?
The first game of the year,
first game of the season,
7 points.
Really good game, back and forth athletically, and they got everybody returning.
Well, here's what I was told in Birmingham, that obviously playing a 4A and a 6A and it being an early game that in Saraland doing what they did the year before, they were a little intimidated. And I talked to some guys from Jackson, and after the second quarter, and Saraland had jumped out on them, got up to maybe a 3 or 4 touchdown lead. And he said once they loosened up and decided, hey, we can play with these guys, they closed it and almost came back. And that's when everybody realized, this team's pretty good. Sometimes it takes a wake-up call like that where you go, hey, I can play on the field with this team. Once you get past looking at the helmet across the field saying, oh, we can't compete, we're 2 classifications smaller. But you're right. I think now with the mindset that this group has and all these guys coming back, they've got a receiver in the top 10 of this class as well, in Keon Chapman, the big target for Landon Duckworth. And he's not the only one. They got 3 or 4 receivers on that team that are phenomenal, that would start for pretty much anybody in the state. So you're right. Top to bottom, they're as talented as anybody. Try to run through these real quick. Anthony Jones is the number 2 player in the state from St. Paul's, the linebacker. Vodney Cleveland, we saw him in the 6A championship game. Defensive lineman with Parker, played alongside the big man right there in the middle. So Vodney
transferred from Prattville, I think.
He did transfer from Prattville. So Landon Duckworth comes in at number 4, and Hezekiah Harris, who's committed to Auburn from Huntsville, big edge rusher, probably the top edge rusher in the state this coming up year. 6'5", weighs about 230 pounds, big time player, the number 5 player. All right, then closing it out 6 through 10, Jaquez Wilkes from Wadley. We're going to see a ton of him. He led Wadley to their first state title this year. He's a man amongst boys, literally. When he's playing down there in that classification. Zion Gibson, the lone commitment to Alabama in the top 10 right now from Gadsden City. He's a cornerback, 5'11", 177 pounds. Marquez Daniel from Booker T. Washington, another big-time wide receiver, 6'5", 200-pound guy, a 4-star. So, 8th-ranked player. JaMichael Garrett comes in at 9. We just talked about him from Gulf Shores, now going to be coming up to Auburn High School. And then Keon Chapman, the wide receiver from Jackson High School. At 11 is Shadarius Tootle. He's committed to Auburn. He's from Cottage Hill Christian in Mobile. He's a linebacker. So Auburn's already got a couple of linebackers in this class working on another defensive end. Already got Hezekiah Harris. This defensive side of the football for Auburn right now is on a heater. That's what we say in basketball when you come down the floor and you hit 3 or 4 threes in a row. Well, right now, the defensive side of the football for Auburn is on a heater. If they want a top player, they go get a top player. It doesn't matter what level, if it's on the defensive line, if it's a linebacker, or if it's in the secondary. But there's your top 10 according to 24/7 going into the 26 class.
Well, back to being a broken record, it is the wildest thing to me that not that we're not recruiting well on the offensive side, because we are, but Auburn goes and hires head coaches that make their bread by being great offensive minds, and then we put a solid product out there on the defensive side, and the questionable side of the ball is the offensive side. So the moment that we fix that, Brett, we're about to have great days. I believe it. I think they're there to be had. Am I buying in this year? No, sir. I'm not going to come on any program that I'm on.
You don't do it.
And just fairy dust all of you out there on how great this next year is going to be for Auburn football. Until they prove me that they're going to flip this thing around, I'm here. I'm in the show me state like Brett Pritchard. I'm going to keep saying what you're in Missouri. You're part of the show me state now. And I am too. I'm going to say it the remainder of this year heading into next year, but the pieces are there.
Right. Doesn't mean you can't get excited that you're getting some really good players, but the results have got to come at some point.
I watched Zach Blackerby, and by the way, Luke Robinson, that's part of our group, the Locked on Bama side. I watch Zach all the time. I really appreciate what they do on that side. And I watch a lot of the Auburn programming like we're doing right here. And Brett, I get, thoughts and pieces of everything that I think based off of all of them. So if you're an Auburn fan, we hope you find us and keep finding all them as well. But Zach said something, I think yesterday, about that was right around what we're saying. At a certain point, you got to go, there's no excuses left to be had. When you got the pieces in the room that should make you,
that for a month.
It's getting more and more obvious to everybody out there that Auburn's got comparable talent to what we're seeing, and the pieces that we don't have, other teams don't have either. You got to be able to go out in the portal and I guess spend the money to get the pieces in. And Auburn's doing that this year. I think the pocketbook's open. It's showing that it's open. And I think on the recruiting front, from the high school standpoint, it's been open. Or you don't get a Deuce Night. Because the more I watch Deuce Night, the more I realize why everybody wanted Deuce Night. Look, I complained to you because I didn't see a lot of Deuce, but I'd seen KJ Lacey so often. Mm-hmm. And I've told you a dozen times this year that Deuce Night may be outstanding, but why in the world we're somehow allowing KJ Lacey out of this state doesn't make any sense to me. Because, the eye test tells me that he's Bryce Young from the state of Alabama. He's got that type of skill set. In the All-Star game, he looked at, didn't he, Brett? I mean, and you and we've had the good fortune to call in championship games for him for the last, 3 years. So I knew what type of talent he was, and I've seen it with my own 2 eyes, what he can do from an arm talent standpoint. But he's going to Texas, and that's fine. But now that I watch Deuce Night, I'm like, I get it. I understand why you'd come into the state and say, well, I'd rather have him or Juju or somebody else than KJ. I think KJ's equal to all of them. I'll be honest. But I don't think his ceiling's any higher than theirs are. And so I say what I've been saying. If we can't develop Deuce Night, we've got some major issues at Auburn that I don't have good answers for because I don't coach football for a living. But if I coach football for a living and I couldn't take that young man and develop him, I'd have a problem with whatever I'm doing top to bottom. There's an issue there.
Well, I think that needs to also be added to Jackson Arnold. I mean, let's be honest. Since he left high school as one of the top players in the country, his offensive coordinator left, okay, and went to Mississippi State. And so, he kind of experienced some transition and some things that maybe didn't fit his style. And, he really highly considered going to Mississippi State because of that relationship with Jeff Lebby. and going back and reconnecting. I mean, you see in high school, Jamichael Garrett with a connection to a high school coach. He ends up finding Auburn High School because Keith Etheridge is there. There's that gets a little bit undersold in these days now because, I mean, you look at Lenore Sellers at South Carolina. The rumor is that he got offered a little bit more to come to Auburn than South Carolina paid him, but he's from South Carolina. He likes being at South Carolina. And sometimes it just shows you, look, I applaud Lenore Sellers because, $500,000 is $500,000, but also peace of mind and being where you want to be also counts for a lot of that too. It's like you and I talk about all the time. Money ain't everything in the world. Your time's worth something. And, how you spend your time and where you want to be in life has maybe more bearing than the final bottom line dollar. If you're getting a good paycheck, then, what's the difference if you're going to go over here and not be as happy as where you are now? So, look, applaud Lenore Sellers for staying it out. He's getting paid. Ain't nobody feeling sorry for him, but he stayed at South Carolina because that's where he wants to be. And so I'm fine with that. These kids in high school and in college want to go find where they want to be. And Jackson Arnold didn't want to be at Oklahoma anymore. Didn't fit for him. So I'm hoping he comes here. But going back to my point is I hope he comes in and enhances. I mean, he hasn't really shown anything to anybody yet either. He's shown flashes of how good he can be. But that offense at Oklahoma this year was so anemic. I mean, it was about like ours. I mean, we were in a pillow fight in Jordan-Hare Stadium. It's 21-10. We were up. And if we don't just absolutely crap the bed, they don't beat us. And he didn't even play in that game. That was the game he got benched. So he didn't even play against Auburn this year. So I'm hoping that it's a rejuvenation for him. But I hope we see some development out of that kid because by all indications, he's going to be the starting quarterback this year.
We better figure it out. It's the long-term issue for us Auburn fans is lack of development from key guys that we get. Have we recruited at the level of Alabama and Georgia? No. Have we gotten guys that Alabama and Georgia wanted consistently? Yes. It's not always been like Tommy Tuberville's first year where I think he and Nick Saban went head-to-head after 16 recruits. If I remember right, Nick Saban got all 16. Is that the stat that we threw out there many, many moons ago, Brett?
Yeah.
That hasn't been the case even since then. Auburn's gotten their fair share. But we haven't developed the ones that we've gotten, especially quarterback. So until we can answer a question like this the way that
this is the highest rated quarterback room in the history of Auburn football, by the way.
But we've liked a lot of the other ones that we've gotten. Correct. Sure. Every year I've bought into whoever we've recruited. From Kyle Frazier to Clinton Mosley to keep going down to Sean White to keep going down the list. I can give you some type of storyline over the last 20 years that you and I have spun this thing to where they're going to be an all SEC performer. Whoever we've got every single year. And most Auburn fans are that way because we're trying to glass half full of this thing that we're going to start developing quarterbacks. But until you can answer this question differently than I'm about to answer it, you're not going to have any major success at Auburn. And that is, who is the last high school quarterback that Auburn personally developed into their ceiling potential? And my answer has got to be Brandon Cox. I can't answer another one where they even got close to that kid's ceiling from an Auburn development standpoint. And that's way too long ago, Brett. You can't have that be the case because you're going to keep going out there and getting Deuce Knights, who I just said, if you can't develop him, you need to get in another profession. And then Landon Duckworth, I think we got a great chance of getting him. He's the imps of Deuce Knight down in Jackson, Alabama. But you got to develop them. And until they do, I'm in the show me state like Brett. I'm not going to buy into anything until we prove that we can take the talent we're getting and develop them up like our key rivals have over the years. They've developed, they don't have this answer. You can't go to Alabama and say, who's the last high school quarterback that you got in and you felt like you got them to their ceiling? Hell, every time they got a starting quarterback, it's not like a transfer in.
Well, they took
go down the list.
Well, they took Blake. Well, they took Blake Sims and made him
into a very solid performer.
Right.
Matt Jones. I keep going down the list of the guys that really didn't get but a year. Jake Coker.
I mean, what did we say? What did we say back when Bo Nix was at Auburn and Mac Jones was at Alabama? We said if they switched
we got
places,
the best version.
Well, no, we switched places. Mac Jones would have, and then Bo Nix would probably won the Heisman at Alabama. I mean, that's how poorly we were developing quarterbacks and have been developing quarterbacks as that nobody expected Mac Jones at Alabama to do what he did. He was not anybody's. Everybody was just highly touting him. So Steven said Jason Campbell.
Well, he's before.
That's what I'm saying. He was 02 to 04.
Yeah.
I mean, and then Brandon Cox came in behind him in 05.
And I'm giving us the benefit of the doubt that Brandon Cox got as good as he could get.
Brandon Cox performed pretty well.
Agree.
He's pretty good. I mean, he had a couple. Did he have a couple of double-digit win seasons under his belt as a starting quarterback? And we always laid an egg during that era. I mean, that was probably one of the best stretches from 05 to 07 of Auburn football that doesn't really have anything to show for it because we were highly ranked, man. That Georgia game that we laid an egg that morning in Jordan Air Stadium, we were ranked like 2 or 3 in the country when they rolled in, and that was a terrible Georgia team that came in there. We turned the ball over 5 times. And so
it was probably his worst game.
It was probably his worst game.
He didn't always – but I'm saying that we got him to the ceiling talent level that he had.
I agree.
He's a very solid performer at Auburn.
He maxed out.
Since then, I can't name one quarterback that we've gotten in that I feel like Auburn got the best out of him. Not one. The only other ones that we have been transfers.
And
Cam Newton,
you can't
Cam Newton was in there for 10 months. Look, I'm all about us taking credit for him, but he'd been all over the map before we finally got him. Nick Marshall, thank the Lord we went and got him, but he wasn't even a quarterback where he came from. So I guess you can consider him a developed talent there at Auburn.
But it was more
Jared Stidham is also a transfer.
Let's be honest, it was more of the system that Nick Marshall ran. That RPO, he wasn't relied on. Again, I know his numbers maybe got a little better from 13 to 14, but for the most part, it was the same from one year to the next. And I think it had a lot more to do because he was a running style quarterback.
But I love these guys we're getting. I'm going to keep saying that. The type of talent that we're bringing in, including Jackson Arnold, the epitome of what I'd like to see Auburn go get. Great dual threat RPO versatile quarterbacks.
Well, you got him. We
got him. Now, if we can't develop them, then we're going to be sitting in the same seat that we're sitting in right now, talking the exact same talk 3 or 4 years from now, Brett. That's the key component to all of this that we're not getting is Auburn fans, is great development. And on the offensive side, I think we're getting really good development on the defensive side and have been.
Well, let's close out this because we got about 2 or 3 minutes. We're going to get off a little early here. Here's what you got to understand about this 26 class. I think you already seeing we went down the top 10. Auburn's already got leans from about 6 of those guys, and they've got a couple commitments already. And then some have no prediction right now. So, again, it's shaping up again for Auburn to really dominate in the top 10. But here's what you got to understand is eyeballs are going to be on the results this year and how this team plays. And this 25 class was phenomenal. And a lot of those guys that are in this 25 class have tight connections with the guys Auburn's recruiting for 26, especially in-state guys. You better win some ball games, and you better start getting production on the field because that class will crumble away. It will dissolve, and guys will start to go elsewhere because they will have seen enough sample size of Hugh Freeze at that point. If Auburn's not getting it done halfway through the year next year, you can't expect guys to keep buying in and coming to a place that's not putting out any results. So,
Amen.
So that's kind of how we'll end that part. And we'll come back. We got a lot more time to talk about these guys. I know you got to get out, but real quick on Auburn basketball, I think it's a travesty that they're not number one team. There's no other team. If Duke, North Carolina, Kansas had the stats and the metrics Auburn basketball has, there's no way they'd be remaining at number 2. You telling me if Auburn happened to be the number 1 team in the country and undefeated and Duke had the metrics Auburn has, they wouldn't have jumped Duke over Auburn already in 2 seconds. So, look, I know I'm complaining, and I know it's December, and I know it doesn't matter, but this team is getting screwed from everybody, every national pundit saying, well, the number 1 team in the country is still at number 2. I saw it all weekend long, and what a joke it was. I saw Tennessee play Middle Tennessee, and that game was close most of the way. So, I hate that they're not getting the due that they deserve, but I know it's coming. I know you got to be patient. but this is the number one team in the country. I think they've been the number one team in the country for a long time. And I'm ready for SEC play to get started. They got one more game coming up on Monday against Monmouth, who's only won 2 ball games. And then they'll start with Missouri at home, which is a very good opponent, by the way. So you got a really, really good Missouri team that's surprising people coming into Neville Arena to start SEC play next Saturday.
You know you got something good going on when you live in the state of Alabama and you talk to Alabama fans and they look at you and go, man, I love y'all's basketball program. I mean, I like watching y'all's basketball program. I like everything about it. And I had 2 family members this weekend say that to me. And we've said that. Look, we've sat on here already this morning and bragged on Nick Saban. At a certain point, you're the one that looks stupid when you can't look across the state and see greatness, and you can't call greatness out for what it is.
Right.
And me and you, we gave that up a decade ago. We're like, I mean, this Nick Saban thing, I'm hoping and praying they never have a run like this again. But it's the craziest thing that we're going to see and have seen. He's that great. Well, Auburn's not all the way there yet because we need to win some championships. But as far as building a program and doing a program the right way and watching what they do off the court and the way that he and his players seem to be on the same page from a culture standpoint, not only when they're on the court, but off the court, that's a true program builder. And Bruce Pearl, he's the very best we've ever had. Pat Dye is close to me, and I'm sure the older generation would say Shug Jordan is. And Hal Barrett on the baseball side's probably got his arguments toward this too, because I think they are all wonderful men. But Bruce Pearl in my lifetime and what I've seen is the best coach Auburn's ever had. From an X's and O's standpoint to a recruiting standpoint to just a program builder. And
I think he had the biggest challenge of any of those guys coming in and trying to build something to where it is. So
great job by the Auburn production for the Children's in Alabama, and the Hayes and everything that they did around that was so good. If you haven't seen that, please go and find Auburn basketball. Just find Auburn Athletics and take a look.
I think we shared the link on our Auburn Blitz Facebook page. I shared it this weekend.
There's a ton of it out there, and it's wonderfully done. Brett and I know some of those guys, and you know, one of their key guys worked with us for a while, and I think a ton of Brady, and I'm wishing him well, and I'm hopeful that he was involved in this because I'm sure he was in that spot. But very, very well done, and I applaud Auburn for all that they're doing there. I mean, it's amazing to watch just the storylines behind this team, Brett, over the last several years, and they just keep getting better and better. And knock on wood, let's just keep everybody healthy.
I'm going to say this about that, and we'll close. That's not just for show. That is not this goes on every year with Auburn basketball. Bruce Pearl's got a heart for kids. He wants to help where he thinks people need help. He's done this multiple times. He runs the Outlive campaign. He's got a heart to try to help other people, and it's not just about basketball with him. But I'm telling you, man, he breathes that into his players. When they get into this team, when they become a part of this team, they become him. I mean, and we say that all the time. Players reflect their coach, and it's maybe the truest statement in sports. I mean, let's talk about Alabama for 2 seconds. I mean, look at the drop off Alabama had from a perception standpoint this year when Nick Saban went away. And again, I'm not trying to sit on here and blast Kalen DeBoer. I said from day one, whoever the poor soul is going to follow that guy has their work cut out for him. And I said it multiple times. You can go back and find it. I said, guy could go 10-2, 11-1. He's not going to meet the standard of Nick Saban. He happened to go 9-3, which happened to be the best opening record for a coach in Alabama history. First-year coach in Alabama history, including Nick Saban. And that got overshadowed because they didn't make the playoffs. And they kind of had some shaky games this year. But, again, it's what have you done for me lately? And the way the team kind of handled themselves versus what we've been watching for the past 17, 18 years was very eye-opening. And so, again, you said it, Bruce Pearl really expects a high standard from his players, and he gets that. And, if there's a problem, we saw a problem earlier in the year. Everybody thought, oh, here's this team, and got in a fight on the plane. And you and I did a show right after that. We were wondering how this was going to be handled. If anything, this team got better and stronger after that incident.
Jakai got better.
And he became a different person. We wanted to watch and see how that affected that young kid. And he's become a different player because I'm sure he was given an ultimatum. You're going to sit for a while and think about what you did. You too, Gene. And here's the deal. You can either change your attitude and the way you look at this thing, or you can go somewhere else. I'm not going to hold you back. I'm sure it was that simple. So
it's looked that simple. And to credit those two guys, they're part of a culture that makes you say, why would I screw this up? Right. I can't screw this up. I mean, look what I'm surrounded by. When you're a smart kid that talented is going to see through that, but a smart kid also that talented will see through issues. And I keep saying it over and over again. I'm going to say it with Auburn football. The excuses have got to go for us, the fan base, and for mainly the head coach, because everything rolls downhill. And when you're sitting in front of a camera and you're giving us excuses on why you're not putting a quality product out there, everybody else gains those excuses too, from the players to the administration, to the coaching staff, to the recruiters, and all the way down to the fans. And I'm hopeful that we get zero more excuses that come out of Hugh Freeze's mouth moving forward, because we don't get them anymore. We haven't gotten them in a long time from Bruce Pearl. Even when we were losing, I didn't get the feel that he was giving us an excuse. He was disgusted with it and wanted to get it fixed. And, tip your hat to Hugh Freeze and his staff, buddy. He's getting the players in here, but it's time for them to perform and those coaches to perform as well.
All right, a couple of comments we'll get to before we get off. John said, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, buddy. Appreciate you always watching. Ed said, does any of the development fall on the kid? It's a lot easier for me to develop Cam Newton than it is Cody Burns. Development can also be offensive play calling, talent around the QB, et cetera. No doubt. I think
here's my answer to that.
And I've got one too. So
my answer to that is you're picking the pieces to go around. You're picking the offensive play calling. You pick the quarterbacks. At a certain point, you pick the offensive linemen. There, I can't pick them. And if you're the coach,
it's lasted too long too. That's
my point. So I mean, Hugh Freeze is in year 3. I totally agree. It's a lot easier to develop Cam Newton, but when you're picking Deuce Knight, you're saying that Deuce Knight fits the system that I want to run here. So go develop him around that system that you want to develop. I mean, and here's Marcel. I don't want to be number one yet, just because as soon as we get there, we will lose. He's got a good point. I'm hopeful that that's not the case.
The last time we were this year. Last time we went over to Arkansas and got beat, if you remember. Right as soon as that team with Jabari Smith and that group went to Arkansas, they'd just been ranked number 1. That's when Arkansas stormed the court, remember, and they beat us. Who in the world would ever thought a school would storm the court after they beat Auburn in basketball? That's when you knew we had arrived, really. That was kind of the magic moment right there. Not that we didn't have a magic moment prior to that with a Final Four, but you really realized what a great thing had been built here at Auburn when another team in Arkansas who has a history in basketball storms the floor when they beat you. So kind of tells that you've turned the momentum in your favor in this conference. But anyway, a lot more to come on that. We'll dive into that some more tomorrow. We'll have Auburn Blitz on today. Andy and Jim will be on at noon. So make sure everybody turns that on. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. You can find our Auburn Blitz programming online, on YouTube, on Facebook. And of course, if you want to sit down in front of your TV, if you got Charter cable, tune it to 701. You can get Auburn Blitz every day at noon there, Randy. So again, want to thank Sense of Green heading into the 2025 year as one of our sponsors and partners here on the Auburn Blitz podcast. We couldn't do it without them. They're your carrier dealers here in the state of Alabama. So if you need a unit, a heating and air unit, and again, you don't know if you need air 1 minute or if you need heat 1 minute, depending on what day it is outside. So make sure you call on Sense of Green. We appreciate it.
Yeah, Lee Apparel and Sign Source. I'm down here in Dable right now. We've got a busy end of the year, especially on our Sign Source side. So if you need signage out there, from design print production all the way to installation, we can handle from start to finish with Sign Source. We're working on possibly 2 locations over in the Auburn market, but I feel real solid to say that we'll definitely have a location in the Auburn market in the next month or so, and really been working really hard on that, and I'll pass along where that will be. But 256-825-0197 is the phone number, and we'd love to work with you. On Lee Apparel side, we've got a lot of screen printing and embroidery going on, promotional products, 20 plus years. A lot of old Russell employees down here with me that understand this textile market extremely well. So we'd love to talk to you and get you a quote out on any of your customized apparel, tees, and promotional item needs. 256-825-0197.
All right, everybody. Hope you have a great rest of the day. And of course, we'll again be on tomorrow, same time for the podcast. Make sure you set your alert there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done that. We appreciate you spreading the word. And again, Auburn Blitz will be on at noon. Hope everybody has a great day. See you tomorrow.